Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to another episode of the Further Stars Podcast 5th season. It's gonna be huge. Be sure to like and subscribe. This is another banger because Jackson Lanzing and Colin Kelly return to the mothership to talk Star Trek: The Last StarShip from IDW. Now come aboard with Traversing the Stars. Hello, Mr. Lanzing, Mr. Kelly. Thank you for coming back to the Further Stars Podcast.
We're back. We're traversing the stars once again.
It's just always excited to have you guys back to talk Star Trek. Is always one of my favorite topics, so thank you so much for doing this. Um, your new book is Star Trek: The Last StarShip, which is so cool and takes place in the 32nd century. So for your fans, why was the 32nd century the best time period to come back to after that long run we just had with Star Trek?
Because when you start to explore a story about final frontiers in the Star Trek universe, that's actually quite complicated. Where do you find a story at the end when we have established that Star Trek can really be told anywhere? Well, it becomes not about a place, but about a time and about an emotion. And what we really were aiming to do with this story is tell a tale that is set when Starfleet, when the Federation is in its most dire moments. And that means, if you look at the history of Trek, setting it during the cataclysm that destroyed almost the Federation itself, the birth.
Now, to be fair, our book actually takes place, and this is going to sound very pedantic, in the 31st century, not the 32nd. It's Discovery that shows up in the 32nd. We are here in the 31st, trying to tell the story of how the world gets as desperate as Discovery does. And the other reason for doing this is because we wanted to set a story during a period that had never been seen before and invite new fans, people who don't read Star Trek books, people who maybe don't even read our books, to come check out Star Trek through the lens of this like really different, really specific story. There's no other time in Star Trek history where things get this desperate. There's no other time in Star Trek history where things get this dark. There is no time in Star Trek history where the Federation has to stand against total annihilation like this, and for the most part, over the course of about 100 years, lose. And that's a really new story. We've been telling Star Trek stories for almost 7 years. We told the last run of the original Enterprise. We told the return of Benjamin Sisko and the whole sort of God War and Lore War arcs. When we were done playing, and across that, we played with really all the toys. So what we wanted to do was come and say, all right, now we've played with every character, we've touched on the stuff that we want to touch on. What's the for us, as Colin put it, that final frontier? And that really was like taking everything at its most desperate, like you said.
Now, the thing with Star Trek is known for its optimism.
Yeah.
We know what happens in the 32nd century, and we know about the burn. Things are going to get not only kind of dark, but it's kind of a downer because obviously we know the direction things are going in. So where do we find the optimism in apparently 31st century Star Trek post burn?
That is the question. That is the question of the book. I think that very search for hope becomes the framework of the book. How do we maintain our Federation and Starfleet optimism? How do we maintain a sense of hope for the future, which Star Trek fans know is coming, right? Star Trek fans know Discovery will show up in the 32nd century and will save the day. But these people have to hold what is left together long enough for Discovery to do it. And so I think fans have the natural optimism of knowing this will actually turn out okay. But new fans don't. And they get to come in on this and realize a world that is falling apart and wonder, can it be saved? Just like Captain Sato, just like Valkyris, just like all these characters on the what starts as the USS Sagan and becomes the USS Omega over the course of that first issue. Everybody aboard the Omega is trying desperately to hold on to the characteristic Star Trek optimism. And kind of our job as the writers of the book, in large part, is to throw asteroids at that hope as hard as we can and see what the characters do to deflect them or carry on.
Yeah, I always kind of think of it like it's very easy to have hope. Like, it's easy to talk a big game when you got your boys at your back, right? Like, if you got the squad, if you know that you're kind of on the right side of history, it's easy to hold on to that hope. But the real test of optimism is, can you hold on to it when your world is literally burning around you, right? Like, that is when you need to almost be delusional to keep hope alive.
Yeah.
Because the world itself is giving you the facts that it is over. And that, the delusion of hope, I think there was a book called that, right? Like the holding on to that optimism and that hope against all odds is really, the core of the kind of story that we need to tell. And once again, is a story that Star Trek has danced around, but never really explored on this stage.
Are we talking a little bit like almost Star Trek Voyager vibes? In other words, are they like the last ship hanging out there, and basically whoever? I mean, or do they even have? With Starfleet has a bunch, rules, etiquette, things of that nature. Are they beholden to any of this now that they are what's left?
Of course. And I think that that is in large part the distinction between us and Voyager. Voyager was the question of, are we going to let go of this entirely and just become something new out here in the Delta Quadrant? The story of the Omega is very different. The story of Omega is, can we hold the Federation together? It's, can we go to each of these planets and keep them involved? Can we get everybody to talk face to face, even if it takes 25 years to do it? Like, can we get the Omega is going to be operating on a century-long timescale. It has 100 years to try to hold two things that are trying to crack apart, a million things really they're trying to crack apart, somehow together. And that means that those rituals, the uniforms, the salutes, the orders, the things that characterize great Star Trek naval fiction are more important than ever. You need to keep those things involved. Because if you don't, if that stuff starts to crack, then you aren't keeping the homeland home, let alone what you're trying to actually hold together of your civilization. So I think it's similar in some respects. I imagine that if Captain Sato and Captain Janeway sat down at the end of both of their journeys, they would have a very interesting conversation about their distinct adventures in holding a starship together through the worst of it. But where Voyager is very much I think a family coming together over time to try to get each other through. The Omega is a bunch of people on pretty dark trajectories, individual and lonely trajectories that are trying together to find some way to hold this place together. And I don't think that they really agree on what that is. And I think that's the other place where we really differ from Star Trek traditionally, is that our characters are very much at one another's loggerheads. There's a core trust problem on the Omega from the beginning that does not resolve like Voyager's does very early. It maintains and holds, because at no point are you going to trust the Borg in your engine room.
Well, I mean, you guys had a very well-regarded, award-winning run of your last Star Trek series. It, like I said, lasted a few years. Is this series at all connected to those books at all? Is there going to be any through lines where like, okay, this is still Lanzing and Kelly creating, Star Trek, or is this ignore everything in the past? Basically, after almost 1,000 years, you don't quite have to worry about the same amount of continuity. So, can you tell me where this stuff falls?
Yeah, so I mean, I think to a certain degree that's the magic trick, right? Like, you are going to be getting a Kelly Lansing book, absolutely. If you know kind of how we throw down, you get excited because it's here. But 1,000 years later, a lot of that continuity no longer needs to exist. But also, we do really consider this kind of act 3 of 3 acts of Star Trek. Not that it's been one continuous story, but the flavors are all there. People know, fans of ours know that the Theseus was first introduced in Star Trek Year 5. It was the core ship of our Star Trek run, and now it is the bones, it will become the bones of the Omega.
Yeah, I mean, look carefully at the ship that they pull out in the double page spread where they create that ship. We talk about how it's built in an 800-year-old sort of frame from the Fleet Museum. That frame is the frame of the Theseus. Our captain's name is Sato. So too is Lily Sato, the ensign on the Theseus, right? We are returning, I think probably this is the way we are the most sequelizing our book, and the way it is the most Act 3 is we are returning to the character who started it all for us in Star Trek, James Kirk.
Well, as we bring back Kirk, like, you guys are Star Trek nerds, big one. So I assume when I make the reference, you guys are going to already know what I'm talking about. Back in 1996, there was a novel called Return, written by William Shatner, in which Captain Kirk is brought back to life by the Borg.
Yeah.
Now, is that considered Is that just something that's like you're recognizing? Is that considered continuity? Is this something different? Kind of tell me what's going on with that now, because I know you guys know it. I know you guys
Of course.
read it.
We are not saying that the return is canon. That's well beyond our framework as writers on this IP.
Yeah.
Here's what we can do. Say honestly and earnestly that when we were kids, we read those books. I didn't just read The Return. I read Dark Fate. I read all those books. They're great books in their own right. There's interesting stuff in there. What the ideas that William Shatner has for his character are fascinating, and they're from the heart. And I've always really thought that his interpretation of Kirk was really interesting, and sometimes at odds with Gene Roddenberry's interpretation of Kirk or other writers' interpretations of Kirk. And I always loved getting that sort of like pure version of that through Shatner's lens. So when we started talking about this book and the return of Kirk came up, something we looked at each other and said sort of out loud was, well, if we do this, then it would only feel right to pay tribute to Shatner and to the return. So that wasn't to say that we brought in the Borg because of the return and we're just adapting the return. That's none of it. But it's we sort of completely absent the return as a thing that we read when we were young. We came to the idea that we really the person for whom the burn would hurt the most was James Kirk, and we would love to see Kirk experience the burn. That's really where this book started in a lot of ways, was like, what would it be like if Captain Kirk experienced the burn? And then that really evolved well beyond, he's not a captain, for instance. It really evolved in a lot of ways. And as the Borg came into the story, they came in kind of naturally through a different framework, through the idea of the transwarp and the idea of using one of the last pieces that we've never touched. If you read all of our Star Trek, this is the first time we've written the Borg that wasn't in some like alternate universe or something. We've specifically stayed away from the Borg, even though they're like one of our favorite things. So this was our chance to say, okay, this is our last story on Star Trek for a while. We're kind of going out with the Last StarShip. This is our last stand for a little bit. And because of that, we wanted to use some of the stuff that we had not used before. And so once we realized we were using the Borg and we realized we were using Shatner, Kirk, it felt like we must pay tribute to the return. We must do a little bit with that.
Well, and beyond even just like paying tribute, even if you yeet that concept, looking at the pieces we had, it was just like, well, this Borg and Kirk, this makes sense perfectly to where our story exists. Yeah. And then it feels kind of wonderful to kind of organically come to a thing that then pays tribute to the characters.
And we've specifically like reached out to William Shatner's people and thanked them for that book. And like, I mean, it's a thing that's really, I hope more Star Trek fans kind of go back and read, if only because it's a really interesting artifact, regardless of if you like it or not. It's just they're fascinating books. And like us, I think a lot of our work, an exercise in how you do the continuity outside the continuity.
I'm a Tech War fan.
Well, I mean, the interesting is the method in which Kirk comes back, and he does come back at the end of the first issue. We're not ruining any spoilers. He's there, third to last page, perhaps. The method of his return. I'm wondering, is this inherently then the same Kirk? Because he is sort of more reassembled than reanimated, and thus, when something's reassembled in that way, do you inherently have all the memory skills, everything else that you had through your life when you were a functioning individual at that point?
That is another one of those. I think you've again hit the nail on the head in terms of the question the book itself is asking.
But I think we can even plus that a little bit, because you just said something that's absolutely correct. That, like, does he have the memories, the experiences of Kirk? Like, yes. Yes, so it's even more of a fine tune. If you are a remade version of yourself with all intents and purposes, all the same knowledge, are you yourself? In a question, it's like, well, we all know that transporters actually take you apart and reassemble you. So in one sense, we do know that you're the same person. This isn't that. But this is the very question that Kirk himself is going to be wrestling with. The entire story.
I think Kirk is going to be really wrestling with two questions, both of which he wrestles with directly in issue 2. Am I me? And if I am or if I'm not, why am I here? And that is, I think, to me, that's why he's such a great protagonist here, because he's asking universal human questions about what my purpose is, why I am here, who I am, how I live through tragedy. And I think that's what we all tend to do when we live through moments of immense tragedy. We say, who are we in the face of this tragedy? How did we help or hurt this? What do we do next? Why are we here and someone else isn't? Kirk's going to be asking himself that, and that's going to be, I think, core to his ongoing journey.
Now, once again, this is spoiler or kind of not spoiler because once again, the first solution not really well. The Borg. When we're talking about the Borg, I feel like it's important to be clear that this is Agnes Borg, not the Borg Queen that we recognize from, let's say, Picard. It's a different iteration of Borg.
Yes.
Seemingly, Agnes is on our side. When she appears in the issue, are we certain that her recreation of Kirk is fully in goodwill? Is there an issue with being reanimated, as it were, by a Borg? And part of we understand them.
Again, questions that every issue of this book is going to address. That is like, I can't give you the answers to any of that because the answers to all of that is the book.
You will be very excited to read issue 8.
Yeah, what I'll say is like issue 2 addresses this directly.
Yeah.
Issue 5 and 6 address this directly. Issue 8 addresses this directly. Parts of issue 3 address this directly.
But we have no interest in answering this question quickly.
Yeah.
Not just because to be teasy writers, but because it's so complicated and rich. It's not a matter of I need to understand the plot. It's we are giving you the drama.
Yeah.
Right?
Girardi is a rich character.
Yeah.
She's a weird, interesting character. She was an interesting character before she was a Borg. Now she's like a fully enabled 700 years at it Borg Queen, or 500 years at it Borg Queen. She's pretty deep in her life and what that means, what she is able to do, how much the Borg speak around her or through her. These are all questions we're going to be wanting to continue to unravel and look at. But I think what's exciting for us, and genuinely why we used the cooperative and not the collective or anything like that, is that, again, we're trying to make this book a fertile ground for new readers. And this was a great way to say, okay, most people, even if they don't know Star Trek, have heard, we are the Borg, resistance is futile. They know the Borg are baddies. Because when Star Trek was at the height of its power, the Borg were the villains. So people know the Klingons as villains and the Borg as villains. And that's why they're in our first arc. Because we wanted to bring in the characters people know and let them see them at the height of their power. Show you the most badass Batleth fight we could show you. Show you the coolest Borg stuff we could show you. Really like sell you on these characters and let you embrace what makes them so exciting. And it's so much cooler to do that with a Borg who has a name.
Yeah.
And a face. It's so much easier for the audience to grab onto Agnes than it is for the audience to grab onto Alice Krige as the Borg Queen. So let's give them Agnes. And it doesn't matter if it's Agnes Girardi. It doesn't matter if you know that's Alison Pill. It doesn't matter if you know that thing exists in Picard at all, or that Picard is a show at all. You don't need to know any of that. You just need to know that this Borg Queen is different than you expected. And that in and of itself makes her intriguing and exciting and a great vehicle for story.
To me, the ball game is scary Borg. Oh, I know what it's going to look like. Mask pop off, kind face.
Yep.
And that's the game, right? Like, oh, my techno zombie has a kind face. Fuck. Okay. My expectations are upside down. Where's this going to go?
And that's really what we're always looking to do with Last Starship is if we are playing the hit, if we're doing the thing Star Trek's already done, something's gone wrong. Last Starship is a vehicle designed to tell new kinds of stories and really like explore what happens when you don't have a lot of the pre-existing notions of Star Trek.
And I mean, also thinking about going back to Kirk one last time on here. It's a hell of a conceit to basically say this guy needs to be brought back to life to save the entire Federation. Only he can do so. I mean, it's very Kirkish, but it's still a hell of a thing to put onto one human being. I mean, on the one hand, the arrogance to think that you can answer that call, and the amount of weight it takes to think that somebody can put that weight on your shoulders. What does that do to an individual? And why is Kirk the only one who can save the world this time, the universe this time?
Again, questions the book is asking. You're right on our wavelength, Jeff. This is exactly what the book is doing.
In the way you phrased that, though, I'm also realizing, like, well, when it was done to Cisco, he had a 7-season emotional crisis and then a 36-issue meltdown.
Yeah.
So, Kirk better get moving on here because there's no 8 seasons for him.
So the other interesting character is Captain Sato.
Yeah.
If I'm pronouncing it correctly, Sato.
Sato.
He's a new character introduced in this first issue. Is he any way related to Hoshi Sato from the Enterprise?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So Hoshi Sato to Lily Sato to Delacorte Sato. We've kind of claimed the Sato bloodline as part of our ongoing run on Star Trek. It felt like a cool. The reason why Hoshi and why like no other character, it's not some sort of random call, is that it felt important that Star Trek and that the Federation and that Starfleet specifically had some first families. We don't really see that a lot in Star Trek, but humans do that. We sort of naturally create family structures and repeating structures. And my dad was an admiral, so I'm an admiral, so my next one's an admiral. Paris, right, is sort of comes from a similar family. We wanted to create something similar to that exists over time. And it was really initially for Lily, for the idea of putting so much burden and pressure on this young girl who is going to end up sort of having the worst trip of all the characters in the Theseus. Like, spoiler alert for our Star Trek run, but Lily Sato ends up probably of the characters the most sort of traumatized and done dirty by the Federation by the end of it, and by her time in Starfleet, and ends up in the Fenris Rangers as a result. Here, we thought it was a really great opportunity to say, okay, well, at some point or another, that family bloodline continued, regardless of Lily. There's lots of them. That would continue and continue and continue, even past the barriers of like species and planet. It would eventually become. We sort of think of Sato as a Federation chimera. He looks a little Andorian, a little bit Vulcan. He's got trill spots. He's clearly got human DNA. Like he comes from a lot of different sort of species and bloodlines. But that name Sato has remained. And that's that sense that as long as Starfleet is gone, there's been a continuity, not just in family, but in like the spirit of the people who go out on that thing. And so anchoring the book on somebody like that, who is going to be the final nail in the wall, and then the wall explodes the second he puts the nail in. That just felt like a great way to anchor that character, who is a new character in the history of Star Trek, not just on the shows, but obviously in our runs.
And in the same way that we were like, well, who can we hurt the most? It's like, well, if Kirk represents, like, for Kirk, the legacy is where he started, right? Like the legacy, he saw the origin and now he sees the catastrophe. For Sato, the legacy is literally 1,000 years of history that his family has helped build, right? Like for him, it's this really, it's a bloodline that he is now faced with letting down. Right. And like those two, we were basically just like looking at what kind of characters can the burn hurt the most. And the scion of a long Federation family and the man who was there to start it really felt like a great way to stab readers in the heart.
Is he then emblematic of Starfleet? Because you said he's a combination of Vulcan and Trills and Endors. Is he an allegory for what makes? Okay.
100%.
Yes.
And that's why he is at the start of the story. He is bringing he's bringing the Gorn into the Federation through the power of diplomacy and empathy and rationalism, like all the things that we most uphold as the Federation ideals. Our ideals, right?
He mentions in that same scene that it has been years, like decades, I think, since any spaceship has shot a phaser at one another, that has like exchanged phaser fire. That means this man has never been in combat. And he is emblematic of Starfleet. He is the absolute apotheosis of what Star Trek and Starfleet wants, which is a non-violent, empathetic world of understanding and mutual support. And when that thing explodes, the great challenge of this book is going to be, to the conversation we were having earlier about continuity of spirit. What does it look like when Sato is no longer allowed to be that man? When history demands you be something else? When the Klingons come raiding? What do you do as a man who's good at talking? What is your utility in that scenario? How can you be a hero? And I think the question that this book answers is not to say, oh, well, you just do what you've always done and it'll work out because Star Trek. No, this world is different. This is Star Trek at its most desperate. And so it's not going to be enough to have hope. It's not going to be enough to be an optimist and smile and be a good guy. This is a world that's going to demand more from its characters and really start to make them ask who they are underneath it. In that way, I would draw a parallel, not a great parallel, but a bit of a parallel to Enterprise Season 3, where, for all the allegory and whatnot of that book, or of that series, that question of, we are now on a mission that does not fit the mission we have previously been on. That we thought we were explorers, and now we are revengers, right? In our book, we thought we were the final diplomats, and instead we're the last soldiers. Is really that's a big change for that guy in specific. And it's a change for everybody. It's going to be a challenge for Valkyris. It's obviously a challenge for Hannah. It's a huge challenge for Wowie. It's going to be a huge challenge for Sato. But as they move on, and the people, and we see the people that they become, that's what's going to drive this story. This is not a book centered on plot. This is a book centered on character and how these characters hold each other to various standards and how that conflict governs the future of the galaxy.
Well, it takes a certain level of skill and captaincy to Captain Kirk. How problematic is that of a situation? Because, I mean, basically, Captain Kirk's legend, I guarantee, a wager, has survived the years of the 31st century. His legend is great. It'd be sort of like a manager suddenly having to manage Babe Ruth if he suddenly came back to life.
Yep.
How problematic is it? And how does Kirk, assuming he has the memories of Kirk, even feel like somebody can captain him at this point?
You're asking every one of the best questions. There is a scene in issue 2 that is going to directly talk about this exact thing, because you know that Sato took the class, the Kirk missions.
Yeah.
He read the Kirk autobiography. He read all 15 Kirk autobiographies.
Yeah.
100%.
Captain Kirk wrote 15 autobiographies.
He's right. 100%. Sato is sitting across from a legend, but most importantly, he's sitting across from a legend that should not be needed.
Yeah. This is, I think, the big adjustment, is that it's not simply a matter of, am I going to get outshined by this guy? It's, what does Sato think of Kirk? Like you said, his legend is great. I mean, yes, true. But Jeff, if you put me and Alexander the Great in the same room, I would be very intimidated by Alexander the Great for obvious reasons. But the primary reason would be his capacity for violence. My primary concern, if I'm in a room with Alexander the Great, is he going to kill me with a sword?
And I don't think he'd write comics very well.
Yeah, I'm not really worried about him as he's gonna steal my jobs. I'm more concerned he's going to stab me in the throat.
Right.
But that's kind of my point. Sato and Kirk don't have the same job. Kirk was a pioneer who went out into the black and looked for new life and new civilizations and boldly went where no one has gone before. And when the world told him he had to blow up a Romulan starship, he did it, even though he felt conflicted about it. Sato is a man who was raised in treaty rooms. He is a diplomat. He has a life much closer to the United States ambassador to Great Britain than he does to Francis Drake, right? His life is just fundamentally different. So here comes this guy, Kirk, who, if you look at his record, has had a lot of people killed comparatively. has done a lot of violence comparatively. Sato's going to look at that guy and be like, why on earth would I let you anywhere near the bridge of a starship? Your capacity for destruction is insane. To draw a very similar or another like weird bad metaphor, it's Demolition Man. It's how everybody looks at Sylvester Stallone in Demolition Man, where they're like, dude, we haven't had a murder death kill in 100 years. Like, help us. But then the minute he does anything, they're like, oh, no, don't help us at that. I think that's like the comedy version of what we're playing very seriously with Kirk and Sato, which is Sato is not going to look at this man and see a hero. He's going to look at this man and see a historical figure of incredible importance, who is also an extremely dangerous ally. And not completely notwithstanding that he was just constructed by the Borg.
Yeah, which was fine. Don't even worry.
Well, I mean, set aside that I guess Kirk is somewhat near like a Neanderthal compared to Sato at this point. As much as Kirk is also known to be violent, he's also a hell of a rogue. Would you wish him upon any captain to have a guy like him on your ship at this point?
And I think, great question, very good goof, but also he's not a rogue, right? Yeah. He's tricky, but he's a philosopher. He is a calm and rational man who does what needs to get done. So he's not, especially in this situation, he's not breaking down the doors and being like, give me this shit. He knows when it's right to observe, when to study a situation, and when to execute. So I think that's what a lot of folks, when they think of Kirk, they think of the like oversexed Lothario, which he wasn't. He's good with the ladies, 100%, but he's not a dummy.
He's Horatio Hornblower.
Just like Sato, he is a man of the classics.
Yeah. And I think that's that idea that in most situations he would still break down the door, but in this situation he is smart enough to not trust himself. It's not like he's back and is like, I'm James Kirk. He's a man who was just reconstructed with his memories. He understands that he's a security liability. Kirk's smart enough to look at himself and be like, oh, I don't trust me either. Right? That question, that challenge of, do I trust myself? What do I trust about myself? Again, ongoing question of the book.
Now, again, this is a bit of a spoiler for if you haven't read the first issue, but since it's in the first issue, we're going to talk about it. The issue ends with introduction of our main antagonist, at least for this issue, this arc, which is the Klingons. Now, I'm going to read a quote from it, and then we can talk about it. The quote is, give me 1 second. The character states that we see, our true nature consigned to history to make way for utopia. So this character's anger is that utopia was not fulfilled, or is it jealousy that Starfleet still exists to begin with?
The way that we think about, that character's name is Hachette. The way that we think about Hachette is that she is a representation of that core. She's like another little nod to Discovery in some ways. She is a representation of that core to Kuvma framework that by bringing the Klingons into the Federation, you are shaving off what is valuable about the Klingons. You are making them into something weak. You are making them into something small. You are making them part of a larger collective, and that simply is not what the Klingons are. The Klingons are proud, and they stand on their own, and they're by necessity violent and fatalist, that when they're presented with gods, they kill them, right? So I think what she's saying there with that specific line is, you burn down our culture to make your utopia. Like your utopia demanded that we subsume ourselves, and we did.
Keeping in mind for folks who might not know, by this point in Star Trek history, the Klingons are part of the Federation. They have been embraced and accepted as part of the Federation, the peaceful Federation of Planets. And to a certain degree, you asked about connectivity with our previous stories. We see that as really being kind of a direct consequence of the Red Path, right? The Red Path kind of evolving and becoming something interesting and more uniting and binding and holistic, that was able to bring them to that place. When we meet Valkis, our bridge officer Klingon, she is a member of the Red Path, and we get to see how it has evolved over 700 years to the point where it is no longer even the violence itself has been kind of drained from that cultural heritage, which is why Hachette, after the burn decimates 99% of all functional dilithium, says, "You promised us utopia, and all we got was obliteration."
Yeah.
Not even obliteration in battle,
Right.
but pointless, Grethor bound oblivion.
And so that's really where we drive Hachette from, is from a perspective that the Klingons have been robbed of their natural birthright to die in battle and in glorious ways, and instead have died for fucking nothing. And she is coming to die good and to bring as many people down as she can on her way. She is I think in terms of this book, she is the last dying breath of that old Klingon versus Starfleet order. And returning to it one last time here felt really important. She's also kind of, we can't talk a lot about it, but this is tied directly in some ways to what they're doing on Starfleet Academy. And we, though we didn't come up with the idea because of that, once their team learned of what we were doing and we started talking, we discovered that there was a great way to thread them together and really make them one story. So I hope, in a couple of years when everything's on the table, people can see the sort of continuity of effort there. But from a shorthand, we wanted to give the old school Klingons one last run. And that's why, incidentally, that starship, or that they're all in ancient cleave ships.
You could bear they
and
might
ancient,
yeah,
they're all in like ancient cleave ships and Klingon armor, right? Like 1,000-year-old Klingon armor. The starship, the star base that they're attacking is in Klingon space, and it is manned by Klingons in Starfleet uniforms. So they're not just killing anybody; they're killing Klingons. They're that blood spurt at the end is Klingon blood. It's
almost like they don't see, they're post-racial. All they see is the uniform.
Yeah. They see Starfleet or not Starfleet, and they're coming for Starfleet intensely.
Now, as far as the idea of utopia, is she inherently right there? Because utopia has fallen.
Yeah.
So, in her argument, then is that she, at the end of the day, her philosophy is right, because the utopian Starfleet is going downhill. It's a sinking ship, probably from her perspective.
Every villain is their own hero in some respects.
I don't think anyone would ever, I don't think suicide by Starfleet is a great path for anybody, but I understand her perspective.
So, what can listeners look forward to in the upcoming issues of Star Trek: The Last Starship?
Issue 2, you are going to see 99% of what we have spoken about in this interview play out. Like, truthfully, we don't make you wait. The core stuff that you are looking for in Last Starship is going to be showing up fast and furious. You're going to be seeing those conversations with Kirk and Sato. You're going to be seeing more clarity about what's going on with the Borg. You're going to be meeting 2 new characters in issue 2 who complete our cast. We've still not introduced our tactical officer or our chief medical officer. You're going to learn both. You're going to meet both of them.
If anyone ever wanted to get really, really funky with a Ferengi, get ready to meet your favorite little guy.
Yep. We are really excited about what's coming down the pike there. It also has an incredible action sequence that I can't wait for people to see. Adrian Bonilla continuing to level up with each panel. I think he is a truly exceptional artist, and people are not ready for what he's bringing in issues 2 and 3.
We have a relationship with Star Trek Online. They've been really awesome with IDW in terms of featuring ships that we've written in the books, putting them into the game, which has been awesome. They recently put the Omega into the game, and it has a special maneuver that is very, very cool that is based on a maneuver in issue 2. So 3. Oh, 3? Yeah, 3. So Jack was like, we'll be Fast and Furious characters. The ship will also get Fast and Furious.
Issue 3 is, I just think, probably the craziest, best issue of Star Trek we've ever written. I just think it's so good. I'm so proud of issue 3. I think it stands up to anything. We posted IDW posted a panel from it recently that's just like a bat left kill that is one of the craziest things we've ever put in a comic. I'm very excited to see what people think of it. And then I think the thing that we really want people to know is that that's chapter 1. These aren't 6-issue arcs. These are 3-issue arcs. So when we get done with those first 3, you're going to find the galaxy fundamentally changed. You are going to find something, a sort of brand new setting for Star Trek. And then 4, 5, and 6 are going to tell you a new story. Issue 1 through 3 are called The Burn. issues 4 through 6 are called something else.
Yeah, there we
And
go.
those issues are going to take you through another really pivotal seismic event in the history of Star Trek, and on and on. You know, when we get to 7, 8, and 9, you're going to get a completely different flavor. We're writing it now. I don't think it's much spoilers to say that it's getting Lovecraftian up in here, but not in the like lots of tentacles way, but in the like this book is scaring us kind of way, which is really exciting.
Yep.
And then we're going to be bringing it round for a close for 10 through 12. This was always kind of developed as a maxi, and we're just really excited to kind of deliberately tell this story out as we go.
If in 6 months IDW announced that it's actually going to be ongoing and run for 500 issues, you know, don't jump on our backs about it. We can all celebrate that.
Yeah. But we're not planning for that. We're just going to do the book that we're going to do, and then we'll see what happens.
But what I heard earlier, though, is saying that this is the end of your Star Trek, though.
For now, yeah.
So what's next for you guys? And the for now sounds kind of important too, though. Is there more Star Trek in the can, as it were, for you guys?
There is more Star Trek in the back pocket. We have absolutely loved our time on it. Like, I don't think anyone, I mean, by the time we're doing a count, and like by the time we're done here, we'll have written like something like 60 issues of Star Trek or something. It's just an incredible number, an incredible opportunity.
And no one's asking us to leave. They're not forcing us out.
Yeah, we're not being chuffed. It just feels like the right point for us to step back. My guy, of course we have more Star Trek stories to tell. We love this stuff deep in our heart. We got a whole bandolero full of new and exciting bitch and Star Trek stories. But right now we are trying to leave all of that on the table.
And I think, you know, truthfully, if anybody who loves Star Trek, you know, is listening and wants to, you know, continue to make it known to everybody who will listen, we would love to do the TV show someday. You know, like we would love to be over there. We've talked to those teams before. That's been an ongoing conversation with us. I would really love it if the next time we come back to Star Trek, it's in a different medium. Because I think comics, we've really spent a lot of time building them, redefining them with Heather Antos and Chris Cantwell and our cavalcade of incredible artists. I'm so thankful for this time. But we come from film and television. It's where we are the most comfortable, and Star Trek is the thing we would love to do in the world the most. So hopefully someday we get a shot at that. We'd love to work on the television side, because I think that's where we'd love to see ourselves.
And imagine Star Trek Legacy will be the one, right? I mean, if you're
no comment. No comment. But I think in terms of what else we got going on, everything else is currently classified.
Yep.
The only thing that we can sort of talk about very openly right now is outside of comics. We just had a movie that was shot recently with Charlie Cox in the lead called Synthetic. We're really excited for people to see that. That's in the edit bay right now with Ollie Ridge, the director. I just think it's going to be a brilliant piece of work. So really can't wait to see that. We're operating on a sort of the story leads alongside Jody Hauser on a big video game called March of Giants over at Amazon Games Montreal. That is a big original IP sort of MOBA, like a massive online battle arena. But it is also kind of like StarCraft. So it's great for your like strategy heads or your like action game nerds. It's a great thing for everybody. We just did our closed alpha. That just closed. So that'll be coming out sometime later.
And it's got great, I mean, like the entire team is so passionate about the lore and the narrative that like it's not a bunch of toys thrown in a sandbox. It's actually a interlocking, cogent world, which obviously as writers, we're super excited.
Yeah, we've been building that for like 4 years. We're really excited to see what people make of that once it's out there in the world. Yeah. And then there's lots coming in comics, but it's all super secret. We can't talk about it yet.
We just had a meeting, my dude. We were late because we just had a meeting, and
yeah, we're late to this podcast because of the meeting.
And I just gotta say, we are so excited for beep 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 beep, and also the beep.
Well, I mean, as you guys both know, you're welcome to the show anytime, as we have both seen, because we've been on a few times now. Come back anytime, talk Synthetic, talk your video game, talk whatever the secret project is, talk Star Trek Legacy when you guys start writing for that. Come back anytime.
Thanks so much.
All right, bud.
We appreciate you
so much.
All right, be well.
Thank you. Ciao.